radio is broadcast on LSL Podcast Channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
16 years after September 11th, where our nation was changed forever, it is hard to believe it. And watching the tributes this morning, marking the exact time when the first plane hit the South Tower, and, of course, when the planes hit, and then when the buildings collapsed, when the Pentagon was hit, and, of course, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the loss of life was catastrophic, but not as bad as it could have been, given the enormity of the crashes of those jetliners with all the jet fuel. For all of you who remember that day like I do, it is hard to believe it was 16 years ago. But our nation will never be the same. We learned some lessons, and I think today we still haven't learned some. Might be worth talking about that. We're going to hit Irma, obviously. Florida now assessing all the damage post-Irma as it makes its way up toward the northwest. And reports of some looting, but again, I think that could have been a lot worse as well. But our nation's going through a lot right now. And lessons learned from 9/11, from what evil really means. You know, what is evil today in the world? And we have ISIS we're dealing with. We have still Islamic jihadists who are seeking to establish a global caliphate. They've been dealt some setbacks, but in other ways, they've succeeded, I think you can say, because they have changed the way we live our lives. And political correctness has continued to, I think, wreak havoc in our society. We don't want to admit that the problem is overwhelmingly a problem of Islamic jihadism. It's not a problem of, for the most part, Lutherans or Presbyterians or Catholics deciding they're going to destroy human life. It is those radical Islamists who seek to do that. Looking back 16 years later, I see a nation that in some ways has forgotten. In other ways, we allow our fear of terrorism to inconvenience us in a way that is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it is absurd when you're traveling and there's like a World War II veteran who's forced to get out of his wheelchair, and you have to take apart the wheelchair, and then he has to have his titanium leg, his knee, examined. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I'm just going to say it. Inconvenience is one thing, that is another. So to that extent, I think we've probably learned the wrong lesson. But we'll talk about that, and whether you think, as Raymond and I think, that this hurricane coverage has been way over the top.
Oh, my Lord.
Raymond, don't you love how they tell, and you tweeted about this, all weekend long they say, evacuate, get out, don't go out in the storm. Right?
Yeah, stay away. Hurricane force winds. Do not go out in it. You could die. Meanwhile, every anchor, every bit reporter, every local and national anchor is out on the street. Now, do they have some invincibility cloak that protected them from the hurricane force winds? I can't figure any of this out. But, mentioning 9/11, Laura, and watching just the harrowing scenes of that tower come down, it does remind you, as I'm seeing in some of the local coverage from Texas, when Americans are faced with tragedy and sudden tragedy, they do pull together. The squabbles and the fights and the racial division, all of that falls away. That may be the hidden blessing of these storms, and it was one that 9/11, in all its horror, unleashed on the country. We saw unity of purpose.
And maybe,
we saw a renewal of faith.
Maybe God, I'm not saying he brought on 9/11, but we're reminded of what is really important, and the rest of the stuff, for at least a short period of time, is washed away. I mean, it's washed away, it's blown away. And I remember flying over the Trade Center site. This was about, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks after, on a helicopter. And I mean, after I'd seen all of the coverage and everything that had happened, seeing it from the air, it was still smoking, and seeing the just vast holes in the ground and the wreckage. I walked through those towers, both towers, every day on the way to work for a year. when I was clerking on the Second Circuit in New York. So when we were in session, not every day, but every day we were in session, we had go from the Vista Hotel and I'd walk through the lobbies. It's just a shortcut to get to the courthouse. And how many times I've been up in those towers? I mean, and all the people who lost their lives, the stories of, a good friend of mine's sister who was single. I think she was 26, 27. And she was helping rescue some of the folks from I think it was the 76th floor or something. But the elevator came up and she said, and this was told by the survivors, Debbie Haggerty's sister, and told by the survivors that she said, "You guys go. I only have a horse. You guys have kids." She was a horse person, so she had a horse, a beloved horse. She said, "You guys go. Get in the elevator. Just I'll get the next one." And that's when the second plane hit, and she died. But there's stories like that. The French film crew that just so happened to be covering the firehouse that day and was doing a documentary. That, if you've never seen their coverage of this, and Drew will look up the title for me, but the French film crew, they usually air it, maybe they aired it over the weekend. They aired it last year on the 15th anniversary. But it is amazing, the footage they caught, including when the debris blew out from the collapse of the first tower. So when the debris blew out, they ran into a building and closed the door. It was a glass door. Everything became black. Everything became
terrifying.
Black. Oh, no.
People have no concept. I mean, I was there maybe a week after the tower went down. And
towers. Don't say tower. Both towers.
Right,
Twin towers.
You could see the debris, the ashes, the papers still fluttering all the way uptown. This went on for weeks.
No, weeks and weeks.
Where you could smell it in the streets. It was a national wound. It continues for those of us who were there.
No.
And certainly the families of those early responders, they still go every year dutifully to remember the firemen, fathers and brothers who went into that inferno and pulled the people they could out. It was amazing. It was like a war in the United States, and I think young people don't quite appreciate it. What it means, what it meant.
My radio show was at night. It was a 7 till 10 p.m. show at the time, because I just launched the show just a few months earlier. So my producer Lee Habib was in Alexandria, Virginia. I was at the gym because I used to go before I had kids or anything. So I used to go to the gym in the morning. So I'm in the gym on the treadmill or whatever. I get off the treadmill and I was watching the Today Show. But I get off the treadmill, I'm doing weights, and my phone starts going, and it's my brother Curtis, who's out in San Francisco. And he said, "Are you watching this?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You go turn on the Today Show." I said, "I was just watching the Today Show." He said, "No, a small plane has flown into the tower." So I ran over to the TV and I looked up and I said, my first comment to him was, "They're coming to Washington." And I said, "I got to go." And I had ridden my bike. I got on my bike, and by the time I got home, the Pentagon had been hit. And I got back on my bike, and I rode down an empty GW Parkway, Rock Creek Parkway at the time, Rock Creek Parkway. Empty. Everything was already shut down. The National Guard had come in. I mean, with a matter of 40 minutes, they had shut everything down. All of Washington was shut down, but they let bikes through. So I biked. I don't think I ever biked faster. I biked all the way to the Pentagon, got as close as you could get to the Pentagon, and I just stood there with like 4 or 5 government workers who had walked across the bridge from, I don't know where they were from, but one guy had a bike. I was the only other one on a bike. And we just had our mouths open looking at the flames coming out of the Pentagon, and they were pulling people out. And it was, we had cell phones, but it was the old flip phones and stuff. I was trying to call people, take photos. I got some photos, but it was just, if you didn't live through it, and if you were in Washington or New York, it was just, I mean, you watched it from afar. It's one thing.
It was chaos.
But to see it, and so I'm watching this, and finally we were close. We were probably, I don't know, maybe 100 yards, maybe. We were close as you could get. They wouldn't let you any closer. Then they pushed us back. So I got back on my bike, and I was riding on the highways. Everything shut down. You could ride in the middle of the highways. I went back on the highway. I went back into the city, and there were National Guards troops blocking, major thoroughfares. But for whatever reason, they let me ride by. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they didn't worry about bikes. I rode right by, went real as close to the White House as you can get, everyone's walking out of the White House still. This was now about quarter of 11 or something like that, 11 o'clock. And it was silence. People were so worried that something else was about to happen. And some people were running, most people were walking, but most people were not speaking. It was the wildest thing. And I kept trying to reach Habib, and no lines were working, couldn't get through any cell phones. And we did the show that night. And at that point, you didn't know how many people were in the towers. It was before all the key cards. People weren't using key cards like they use them today. So at the time, we didn't know. It could have been 3,000. It could have been 19, 20,000. No one knew. And everyone assumed there'd be at least 20,000 people dead in those towers, and then people were getting to work. It was nothing short of a miracle that we didn't lose more people. It was just nothing short of a miracle. And I mean, what they should have done, they should have commandeered planes later in the day. But they wanted to get those flights that were going over to L.A. because they had all the fuel. So they wanted to get as much fuel in the planes as possible, that Mohammed Atta and company, those freaks. But it was wild, I've got to say. And we did the show. We talked to, people who were on the scene and firefighters and it was hard. That was hard. That was the hardest show I've ever done. It wasn't after, some electoral loss or, Obama winning. That wasn't a hard show. But that show that night, I mean, people were crying.
Oh, people were in shock.
Crying. And then Lee and I went to dinner. It was like a night. It was a night where the whole city was in a hush. But Lee and I were out to dinner on P Street somewhere in Georgetown, outside of Georgetown, toward DuPont Circle. We're at an outdoor cafe, and it was a beautiful night. It was just so bizarre. It's a beautiful night, silent, because you're so used to planes going over in D.C. Planes, dead silent. And there was a kid, must have been 20 or so, who was like walking down the sidewalk, and they were loud. And they seemed too boisterous for what had just happened, loud. He had an American flag, and it was carrying it over his shoulder. I'm sure he was trying to do something patriotic, but he was dragging it on the ground. Something went really primal on me. I jumped over the barricade. I'm not kidding you. I jumped over. There was like this fence kind of things because they wanted people to go in the restaurant a certain way. I jumped over this thing, and I went in front of him, and I said, I said, pick the flag up. Don't drag it on the ground. You know what just happened to the country. And the kid just looked at me like didn't say anything, picked it up really fast. But it's like everyone was on edge.
Yeah.
Everybody was on edge. And everybody got their flag out. And they flew their flag for weeks and weeks and weeks. I don't know where all those flags went. One of the first things I did when I moved in my new place is I put a flagpole up. And that sucker is up there. That's never coming down. It has the light on it, so you can keep it up. As long as it doesn't get all ragtag, you can keep it up as long as you want. One problem, it has a crank on the side. I think Nico did something to it, so you can't either crank it up or down. It's just stuck there. He did something to that crank. Already broken. So
you can shimmy up there to change
that thing is so tall, the whole neighborhood could see that flag. I'm like that, and when people come into the house, they said, "Wow, that's flagpole's a little high for this neighborhood." I said, "No, it's not high enough. That thing's never coming down. No one, junkyard will tack anyone who goes after that flag too. Anyone comes to that flag, junkyard will take them right down." So it was a wild time. But do you think we learned our lessons from 9/11? It's an interesting question to ask all these years later. Lessons of patriotism, recognition of just how fragile life is. Even to this day, when I left the house this morning, the kids were getting ready for school, and ready to go to school, and I just hugged them all. I said, "I love you so much," and I said, "Do great in school." I'm cognizant of that. And I think it partly was that day, because you hear all the comments from people saying, "I wish I told my son I loved him. I wish I told my husband I loved him one more time." And every time you're with somebody that you love, remind them how important they are to you. You should do that every day. But that's one thing that stayed with me, and the flag. So I'm never taking down the flag. Flag's never coming down. But did we learn all the right lessons from 9/11? And are we ready for the type of heartache and suffering, natural disasters, and these types of man-made crises that befell us on 9/11? Do you think you're ready? Are we ready as a country? Are we too divided all those years later? 855-40-LAURA, Raymond Arroyo and I here on the Laura Ingraham Show. We're going to talk to Congressman Ron DeSantis. He's going to give us the latest on Irma's wrath. Has anyone checked on Chris Cuomo? Is he okay? Didn't he have water?
They're all sunning. They're getting tans at this point. Nothing is going on.
Oh, my God.
But they're standing like in front of the two broken branches and trying to make a story of it.
I'm sorry, but at one point, I swear I saw a wind machine next to them blowing the branches.
That was just Roker trying to keep the ratings up.
I mean, Marco Island and the Keys got hit bad, but I mean, considering what they were saying was going to happen. Oh, wait a second. Did you see that? Oh, look, CNN has it right now. They're moving Rosie O'Donnell back into the water. That's amazing. Stay with us. You sent a clear message to the media and the political elites last fall. You wanted new leadership that focused on the middle class, not the political class, on your lives, not theirs. Well, they didn't get the message. They've been working hard since Election Day to block the voice of the people and help Democrats regain control of Congress. My friends, that cannot happen. You voted to drain the swamp, to take money and power away from Washington, D.C., return it to the hardworking people of this country. Well, we better do that. To moms and dads struggling to make ends meet, young workers trying to save for their future. My friends, small business owners looking to grow and hire employees, we all have to go to the website taxcutsnow.com. Send a letter to your member of Congress to support tax cuts. That's taxcutsnow.com. There's no exceptions, no wiggle room. Get these tax cuts through. Put the pressure on Congress. Go to taxcutsnow.com. That's taxcutsnow.com. The best way to avoid a Nancy Pelosi-led Congress in 2019, go to taxcutsnow.com. If you've listened to my show for any period of time, you know how much I love Food for the Poor. They do what they say. Their financial integrity is unequaled, and I've seen their work personally. I'm so excited to work with them again this year. In Haiti, 1 out of 14 children will never see the age of 5 without our help. Together, we're going to save the lives of 4,200 children. $50 provides food for a year and clean water for life for a suffering child. Call 844-868-4673 or go to lauraingraham.com. That's 844-868-4673 or go to Laura.
This was.
Has he ever heard of a Ziploc bag? Even I do that when I go running and it's raining, which I don't do often. But if I do, I'm in a boat, I put it in a Ziploc bag. He doesn't even. Chris Cuomo doesn't even know to put in his Ziploc bags, and he's the one top anchors during the storm. By the way, in Tampa, the mayor says a punch in the face became a glancing blow. So much for the media telling us this is the worst storm in the history of all storms in the history of the universe. Don't celebrate Constitution Day every September, and I know you value the Constitution. I do, and the rights it secures. But do you really know the basics? And look, you can't really celebrate something if you don't understand why you should. Hillsdale College wants you to know the foundations of your freedom, so Hillsdale has brought back, for a limited time only, their free online Introduction to the Constitution course. Now, when you log on to lauraforhillsdale.com, you can take the course at your own pace in the comfort of your own home, or you can do it with family and friends, even your book club or a small group of friends. Each lesson is under 15 minutes long, so that's great. It's not going to take you much time. And now if you can download a free course companion booklet that includes great discussion questions for hosting your own Constitution study group at home. Again, it's all at lauraforhillsdale.com. And Hillsdale's mission, always to educate Americans, and informed patriotism is what we want. So sign up now in honor of Constitution Day. Pursue truth, defend liberty with Hillsdale College. Sign up while you still can at lauraforhillsdale.com. People just stopped watching the coverage because there are other things happening in the world. I'm not minimizing the damage or the difficulty or the suffering of real people. I mean, we have 5.7 million people without power, and we have at least five dead because of the storm. We have some reports of looting, not as bad as it could be, but that's the lowest of the low. I've got to say, that's the lowest of the low of people who loot. So they're not looting essentials either, by the way. But Raymond, it's not like New Orleans. You all know how to loot better in New Orleans.
That's right. We move right in
VCRs.
Right. You move right in for the widescreens and the Nikes, the mink coats, Cadillacs. We had all kinds of people getting looted. But, I have to say, and you mentioned it, the coverage was so over the top.
Ridiculous.
It spread more fear than information. Category 5, the most devastating. You've got to lock everyone down. This is the worst thing. Get out of the path. It was really over the top.
Big water.
It ended up being
Big
heavy
Water
rain.
made a lot of money. That's it. Rush calls it Big Water. He's like, Big Water's making a lot of money. It is. Yeah, you can need water for your kids and have some water, but I mean, they're acting like it's like Armageddon. I mean, it isn't. The Tampa mayor sounded a little miffed. Like, Like it was supposed to be a punch in the face. It was a glancing blow. That was my favorite line. Joining us now, Ron DeSantis. He's a Republican from the other side of the coast that really got spared. They're Daytona Beach, and he joins us now. Congressman, how you doing?
Oh, we're doing good, Laura. It's it was interesting with the coverage. I left Washington early on Thursday to get down here because they were projecting it to buzz the whole.
Right. You all were supposed to get slammed. I think it was the East Coast that was supposed to get hit the most, and then I guess it just decided Irma had a mind of her own and decided to go up the West Coast. As far as I can tell, the only really bad footage of the video footage they had, which I think is the same footage they played all weekend long, was of 4 or 5 palm trees in Marco Island. It was the same palm trees all weekend. Do they have any other footage than those same 5 palm trees? And then Isla Mirada got nailed. The Keys got nailed, especially if you have a one-story. A lot of the mobile homes, of course, get hit the worst. In the Caribbean, some Caribbean damage. Even the Bahamas didn't really suffer much. Nassau is fine. They had a few branches here and there, but I do think the media's coverage, Congressman, turned people into panicked, crazy people. And my friends, our mutual friends from Palm Beach, they got out of there, and they have a house up in Washington. It was easy for them, but all these kids are out of school, and I don't even know what the cost was of the evacuation, but it's got to be just a hefty price tag.
It was a double evacuation for some people because you had people from Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach evacuating 3-4 days ago to the west coast of Florida, and then they end up in Tampa. And then it's like, okay, this could be Tampa's Armageddon. So like, well, what are we supposed to do now? And I-75 North was just a total parking lot. So you eventually had people, both on the front end and back end up in kind of central Florida. Now, they did get some heavy winds and rain, right, but they weren't in the eye of the storm. So it was kind of a, people were evacuating. I think part of it was the media, but I think part of it was just after seeing what happened in Harvey.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Floridians, millions of Floridians who've never experienced a hurricane hit landfall because we haven't really had one for about 10 years. And but I think with the images of Harvey, people are saying, well, they're saying it's a big storm. We don't want to take any chances. And so people got on the road very early, but obviously it's a difficult state to evacuate from if it could potentially hit the whole state.
No, that was unfortunate. So at this point, Are we out of the? Do you think we're out of the clear in the hurricane season? Raymond Arroyo always reminds us that it goes through middle October hurricane season.
November.
It's not hurricanes in November. November, it's like Christmas hurricane. What? I don't think it's November, Raymond. When's the last time you had a big? Is it really? I don't remember.
Yeah,
Look that up.
That's the end of hurricane season.
Yeah, well, according to whom? The Acme weather forecast. That sounds a little. It's hurricanes in January. What? No hurricanes in November.
Congressman said it right.
Congressman, there are no hurricanes in November. Raymond doesn't know what he's talking about.
They will say. They do say it will go to November, but I would say that this is the peak right now in this kind of period, the end of August through the middle of September. We had Matthew hit in, I think, the second week of October last year. So you're not necessarily out of the woods. I mean, you could definitely see another hurricane. So I guess my fear with that is because people evacuated and then their areas were not necessarily affected as they were anticipating. If we do have one bearing down, how are people going to heed the warnings? And some people may decide that it's not worth it. So I think that will be a concern if that happens.
Yeah, you always have to wonder when the media design new graphics packages on cable news for the hurricane. I mean, they had their graphics department working overtime, and they had this poor old Chris Cuomo had water in his pockets, and they had Griff Jenkins, that poor thing, had just been in Harvey, and now he's standing up to the knees. I mean, these guys, but I think a lot of these weathermen, like, this is their Super Bowl. You have to realize this is the Super Bowl, election night, and everything rolled in a World Series. So they get the waiters, the tight black T-shirts, and they're like ready to go. So like everybody has their role to play in this, but we're just glad there wasn't a significant loss of life, although every life is obviously precious. Congressman DeSantis, I want to play a soundbite for you. This is not storm related, although it could be Hurricane Steve. This was Steve Bannon on 60 Minutes last night. Let's listen.
You are attacking on many fronts people who you need to help you to get things done.
They're not going to help you unless they're put on notice. They're going to be held accountable if they do not support the President of the United States. Right now, there's no accountability. They do not support the president's program. It's an open secret on Capitol Hill. Everybody in the city knows it.
And so, therefore, now that you're out of the White House, you go into war with them.
Absolutely.
Bannon describes himself as a street fighter, and I think he believes in his heart of heart that the majority of the, quote, establishment Republicans on Capitol Hill, and you know who they are, the people who didn't like Trump, didn't think he was going to win, not comfortable with this new kind of dynamic, a little odd, he's doing a deal with Nancy and Chuck, and that they're really part of the barricade, to keep my book title in view, Billionaire at the Barricades, which is coming out in a few weeks. They're part of the barricade stopping real progress. What is your thought on Bannon's analysis of that?
I think there's a lot of merit to it, Laura. I mean, the swamp includes career Republican politicians, and I think those folks look at Trump and they say, he'll be here 4 years, maybe 8 years, but I'm going to be here another 20 or 30 years. And so I think their allegiance is more to the status quo and to the D.C. establishment than it is to the people who really rose up in these primaries and then in the general election. And I do think you see that time and time again, and that's been a major source of frustration for guys like me who really want to put a lot of points on the board and start advancing, this agenda.
Do you think tax reform will be done in the next 60 days or so before everyone takes off for another break? On my view, and I said it on TV, if it's not done, if we don't get these tax cuts through, you guys are finished anyway. So you got to get the tax cuts.
I mean, we should have been in over August working on this in the budget, so we've lost valuable time. I think the House will pass tax reform. I think it'll be a good package. I can't predict the Senate. I mean, they couldn't even do Obamacare repeal and replace after promising it for 7 years. You had some members who voted to repeal in the past, switched their votes, wouldn't vote to repeal. So I think we'll do it in the House. I think it'll be teed up. But here's the thing. You hear people say, oh, he cut this deal with Pelosi and Reid and Schumer. How is that? That's poisoning the well for tax reform. No, it's not, Laura. All Republicans have to do is pass a bill. The president wants to sign legislation. He's not going to get involved and try to torpedo it. If you do what you say you would do, you have a willing partner in the White House. We complained about Obama for 4 years. Let's put these bills on his desk, and I think we'll be happy with the result.
Yeah, well, that's music to my ears, Congressman. Give him legislation he can sign, and he won't look elsewhere. He is a populist. He is a conservative populist. He is economically and fiscally conservative. He wants things done. He doesn't take no for an answer. He wants them done. And I think as someone who's, he's used to getting things done and putting together coalitions of people in business who can either develop a project, make a deal, start a new television show, and he puts a team together. And if the team he has isn't getting it done, he switches them out and puts in a new team. And that's what he does. So I don't understand why anyone's surprised about this.
Well, look, we have, it's one thing if there are certain items that only he wants that Republicans didn't run on, then he needs to be in there and get us to where. But on things like Obamacare, tax reform, all these things, we've all been chatting about this for years. Yeah. I mean, you know that.
Heritage Foundation, AEI. I mean, we've been you know what I like to say, Congressman? You all have been think tanking about this. I use think tank as a verb. He's think tanking about this for like 10 years. And now finally we got the guy in and get nothing. So it's very frustrating. I think, there are going to be primaries of certain senators, and I've already been on the phone with a few people and even a few congressmen. And I'm telling you, be put on notice that if you're perceived to be an obstacle to the Trump agenda and what he believes and what he ran on, then you're going to be primaried. And I got this list in front of me of people, and there's some good people who are going to go onto these primaries. I think people are very impatient. They're not going to wait for results to 2019, Congressman. They want results now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, if you're a Republican congressman or senator and you spin yourself into a tizzy over Trump's latest tweet or what he does here or there, when you're not tending to your own business by passing legislation, I think Republicans look at that and they say, you guys need to get stuff done. Stop worrying about undercutting the president. And there's no secret in Washington, the easiest way for a Republican to get a microphone put in front of their face by CNN or NBC is to criticize other Republicans, but particularly to criticize Donald Trump. And so there's some folks who've made a cottage industry out of that. The base is sick of that, and we can't have that anymore if we want to do the American people's business.
Congressman DeSantis, I'm glad people in your district are okay. It seemed like it seemed like it was going to be a devastating blow to your state. The cost of this, though, AccuWeather, I don't know why they're projecting costs now. They can't even get the weather right half the time. But AccuWeather is saying it's $290 billion, Harvey and Irma combined. But we're looking at...
Well, we'll see. I mean, we got to assess the damage, Laura. I mean, I think it's safe to say it wasn't the cataclysmic storm that they were envisioning. But I think there is damage around the state. Hopefully no more loss of life. But I think over the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll get a better sense of that. I'm just glad the manatees and the sea lions are finally getting their due in the cable coverage because I'm a big animal person. And if it's a day without a dolphin or the day of the dolphin, the dolphins are now getting their help from the people. The manatees, the poor manatees, when the wind sucked the bay out, some of these manatees had to be rescued because the water just got pushed back further before the surge came. And so there were some really heart-gripping pictures of a couple manatees being saved. Yeah, it's sad, but it's good. It's good that they were saved, and it's good that your district and much of Florida did not get the damage that was predicted. Congressman Ron DeSantis, thanks so much for your input. Great analysis. We'll take a break. Don't go away.
Sunny, thank you for the love you brought my way. There is a strong argument to be made that standing in a storm is not a smart thing to do.
Contributors who agree to this assignment. You really have to be desperate to make a name for yourself if you say, I'll do it. Remember when Dan Rather used to tie himself to trees? He did the same thing. He tied himself to trees during hurricanes. Dan Rather loved doing that.
Extreme reporting, I think is what it's called, Laura.
Yeah. But
I love when they're leaning in. Oh, that was a bad gust, and the rain's coming down like bullets. What do you think a hurricane feels like? Yeah, that's why you don't stand in the middle of it, goof.
No, I'm just relieved that that little baby dolphin is okay. I was concerned about the dolphins.
The fact that they're spending all the time worrying about the manatees shows you there wasn't a lot of loss of life, so that's a good thing.
No, they're like, get Anderson Cooper to the manatee, quick! They're like, well, we've already rescued it. Unrescue it. Put it back on the beach. We need the scenes. We need to capture this on film. Manatees swimming away.
I saw the breathless reports. The eye wall is passing over Walt Disney World right now. They had like a half-inch of flooding at the Animal Kingdom Resort. Okay, like nothing happened.
The alligators loved it. It was good for them. So they had the swamp. That swamp. What's the swamp? The Everglades part. Everglades had it. Was all very positive for them. It was nasty in some areas, but not. It wasn't as bad as it could have been. But the manatees and Michael Moore was rescued, so that's good. They're just moving him out now. For one, I'm remembering how great a voice Linda Ronstadt had, and her voice, she's been afflicted with. What does she have, Raymond? Raymond Arroyo's with us here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Does she have MS? What does she have?
Yeah, I think it was some neurological thing that really set her back.
What a talent.
Great voice. Beautiful voice.
What a great voice. And that's the number one. Number two, I'm remembering how bad a campaign Hillary Clinton ran, and also I'm remembering her fainting during the last 9/11 ceremony. Remember last year when they whisked her away? They whisked her away. She stumbled. She fell into the sedan. It doesn't seem like this was yesterday that we were covering it. It doesn't seem like a year ago. Seems like we were just covering this. They brought her up. She started to get woozy. Then they kind of.
Woozy? It was like a seizure-like tremble. And then she fell to her knees. They held her up.
Then they kind of threw her into the sedan. Remember? Like she was a piece of meat. Threw her into the sedan. Then they whisked her off, and there was no one who could have, there was no chase vehicle. So then she ends up at her daughter's apartment, and then she emerges in this stage scene a few hours later with those weird glasses with some girl who comes up and gives her a flower. That was like something out of the Soviet Union. That was such propaganda. Thank you, little girl. I'm totally fine. I have no health problem. Don't worry about me. And suddenly, Oh, no,
Remember
no.
they said it was influenza. And then I'm like, why is she breathing on this child and handing on floral arrangements to her?
Raymond wanted to find a plaintiff's attorney to sue Hillary because she's infecting that poor little girl after the 9/11 ceremony. Remember she coughed for about 3 minutes straight on 5 different occasions? She just could not stop coughing.
No, it was bad. Bad.
Oh, no. So Bannon comes out in the 60 Minutes interview. Hillary comes out on CBS Sunday Morning. Who's the new anchor of CBS Sunday Morning?
Jane Pauley.
Oh, my goodness. They're really dragging out well, I like Jane Pauley. I've always liked her. I think she does a good job. But she did a pretty good job and a fair one with Hillary. I mean, this Hillary Clinton, you could almost play the whole interview. It confirms what Steve Bannon was saying. She still doesn't really get it. And Jane Pauley at one point says she's still gobsmacked by what happened. And you get that feeling. Okay, let's listen.
I would also add that the voter suppression that we now know had been in the works and really put into effect in a lot of states like Wisconsin, North Carolina, et cetera, played a role. And then let's not forget sexism and misogyny.
Okay. Misogyny? Are you kidding me? If Donald Trump was a woman and was a woman running on a populist conservative platform, he would have won. Because people want the issues tackled in a certain way. Bannon hit this, by the way, the maligning of people like me, him, and everyone else who stood for Trump.
That speech of hers is an embarrassment. Breitbart, alt-right, ethno-nationalism, white supremacists, it landed flat, okay? And you know why?
Because you want no part of ethno-nationalism, no part of...
It's ridiculous. It's on the face of it. It's absurd.
You don't want any part of any of those people.
Well, it's not just that. It's absurd. First off, not only is it morally wrong, it's also totally irrelevant.
I think Steve Bannon should run for office after this interview. I think he did great. Do you notice how he is not cowed at all by the 60 Minutes? Ooh, 60 Minutes is coming. He doesn't care. He's like, do a close-up. I look really tired. I don't care. But Steve Bannon has got to get some sleep. I told him, he says, I don't sleep. I don't have time to sleep. I said, okay, well, then you're going to have an early demise because you need to sleep. Sleep is very important, to quote Ariana Huffington.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ariana.
Well, darling, you need to get your sleep. It's very important.
Going to the egg, Laura.
Oh,
little egg.
Yes, it's a way to sleep within an egg formation. You hang from the ceiling with an egg, sheets in the form of an egg, and it allows for a childlike fetal position sleep. It's very good for you.
Deep REM, Laura. Not enough deep REM for you.
Put away your screens and cover up the bright lights on your security alarm pad. By the way, my security alarm pad in my bedroom is so bright. This is like a beacon you could see from 5 miles away. I've got to get that thing lowered. I can see a glow in my room. That's not good, right? That keeps you awake, that blue light. Horrible.
I don't see a blue light. Maybe that's a tunnel you're seeing before you.
Okay,
don't
you know
go
what else
into
I
that
did?
light,
Speaking
Laura.
of sleep, how many of you think you get a good night's sleep? Honestly, how many of you sleep well? Drew, do you sleep well? How do you sleep?
Drew's like 7 hours or so.
His whole 7 hours. God, I dream 7 hours.
About 7 hours or so. It's good.
But do you sleep deeply?
Deeply, no. I'm a toss and turning kind of guy.
He tosses and turns. Yeah. Okay. He's 25. What are you, 25?
Yes.
25.
Exactly.
He's 25. So I don't think people ever sleep anymore. I don't think they sleep well unless you're a teenager.
Yeah, college is when, that's the last time I remember sleeping into 10 or 11. I haven't slept in that late in a while.
Okay, the only time I've ever slept in late, and I might have told this story before, but just forgive me because a lot of you haven't heard this. This was about 4 months ago. I was staying at my friend Wendy's apartment in Manhattan, and she lives right on Central Park. But she lives on the second floor, so you're right at street level. But she has this machine, one of those noise machines.
White noise machine?
Yeah. And then I took 2 Dramamines. She says a Dramamine. Take a Dramamine. She said, well, or 2. Well, I took 2. Okay. It was a Dartmouth Review anniversary. That's what it was in Manhattan. So I took 2 Dramamine. I had 2 over 4 dogs in the room with me. They had to check on me. They thought I was dead. They checked. No. They came into the room at 11 a.m. Okay, and I will say this. In my entire life, I have never slept I don't think I've ever slept past 9 a.m. And that was 30 years ago. I'm an early riser. I always get up early. Latest, 7 o'clock. But that's really unusual for me. But 11 o'clock, 2 Dramamine. I don't know if that's probably not even good for you to take, but I don't like to take anything else. Occasionally, you just need to sleep. The 2 Dramamine, why does Dramamine put you to sleep? It's great. I probably don't do this at home, kids, though. Don't copy what I just said. But I'm just saying, Raymond, you are a deep sleeper, though, correct? You sleep well.
I do sleep well. I mean, there are times
I don't know why you sleep well. What do I not do?
Something. Well, part of it is you text all night long because I get texts from you at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're up so the blue light of that will keep, Methuselah up. Yeah. And you're also sending things to 12 people because you're worried about the show the next day. And
right.
You're basically
I was up at 3:40 or 3:15. I don't know if I texted you, Drew, but I was up really early this morning. I did a couple times, and then I went back to sleep, and then I woke up at 7 because I freaked out. I was like, oh, my God, 7 o'clock! Jump up. But I don't sleep that deeply. And I know everyone says there's the rules, cold, warm milk, and then don't have any screens. Okay, let's go to the real world. I'm not going to be downstairs heating up warm milk. I'm not going to have warm mashed bananas unless I'm ready for the home. And I'm not going to, I have to do my work.
Don't rule that out yet.
Well, I'm just not going to do it. Why don't we just go right to the Gerber's baby food in a jar for me at night, okay? I'm not going to do any of that.
The drip.
No, I'm not going to do that. And then they said, don't drink coffee. Okay, I'm drinking my Starbucks coffee right now. I will not have coffee after noon. You know me. I don't drink coffee after that. So I'm not having any coffee. I don't drink soda. So I have no soda. I have no caffeine. Maybe I have a lot on my mind and it keeps me up. But I mean, do you get a good night's sleep? And if not, why not? When's the last time you got a great night's sleep and why? And keep it. It's a family-friendly show, by the way. 855-40-LAURA. That's a good thing to ask. Bannon was awesome. I think he should run for office. Bannon should run for office. Maybe I don't know where he lives, but I think Bannon is just, you know what it is also, I think? He's made so much money. He has the freedom of having financial security. He bought that Seinfeld. How much, what percentage of the Seinfeld rights does he have, Raymond? I don't remember.
A small percentage, but all you need is a small percentage. It's been running for 20 years.
Yeah, it's a multi-billion-dollar investment. So he's been a really smart investor, and he now feels like he has, however long he has on this earth, he's going to devote to saving the country. That's really cool.
Well, we also have to get into, and we'll play it later, what he called the biggest political mistake Trump made. And it's a doozy.
Okay, we'll get into that.
One I think you'll agree with, Laura.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And we have one of the foremost scientists in environmental sciences and studies is going to tell us about the climate change alarmists and hurricane season. Everything you need to know on your healthy radio addiction. Remember, Life's Set go throughout the day. The GOP leaders face the consequences of their Capitol Hill leadership vacuum, and we'll see what happens in 2018 with all these challenges. And the Equifax breach. 143 million Americans, that's half the country, has Social Security numbers now compromised and their names and home addresses. This is serious stuff. So what all that means to you, how you can check to see if your information was breached, all on lifeset.com. You sent a clear message to the media and the political elites last fall. You wanted new leadership that focused on the middle class, not the political class, on your lives, not theirs. Well, they didn't get the message. They've been working hard since Election Day to block the voice of the people and help Democrats regain control of Congress. My friends, that cannot happen. You voted to drain the swamp, to take money and power away from Washington, D.C., return it to the hardworking people of this country. Well, we better do that. To moms and dads struggling to make ends meet, young workers trying to save for their future. My friends, small business owners looking to grow and hire employees, we all have to go to the website, taxcutsnow.com. Send a letter to your member of Congress to support tax cuts. That's taxcutsnow.com. There's no exceptions, no wiggle room. Get these tax cuts through. Put the pressure on Congress. Go to taxcutsnow.com. That's taxcutsnow.com. The best way to avoid a Nancy Pelosi-led Congress in 2019. Go. Roger Pelkey is with us. He's a former professor of environmental studies at UC Boulder, author of the new book, The Edge, The War Against Cheating and Corruption in the Cutthroat World of Elite Sports. But he's an expert in environment and all this nonsense with the various climatologists and other so-called experts saying, well, in effect, this is the Republicans' fault. Joining us now, Roger Pielke. Roger, great to talk to you. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
So you heard Tapper, man-made climate change, hurricane season, Harvey and Irma, it all adds up.
Yeah, well, if you would have told me 25 years ago when I first started studying disasters and extreme events that it would become a political left-right issue in 2017, I wouldn't have believed it. It's pretty amazing how politicized the weather has become.
Well, so the consensus on the and the establishment media, as I like to call them, is that because we pollute more than other countries, given our population, that we have a unique, important responsibility to act against pollution and reduce our levels of CO2 emissions. But that leads to all sorts of policies and programs and regulations that, of course, make life oftentimes very difficult, more expensive for people. That's really the end game, is to make government bigger to respond to the climate change threat. But what do we know for sure about the weather and climate change, the temperature of water and how it swirls things up? If I heard it once, I heard it 1,000 times. Well, because the Gulf is so warm, this category of 4 could turn back into a more powerful storm. And they kept talking about the warm Gulf water.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you two ways you can look at this problem, and people usually sort themselves according by which version they like. And at the end, I'll tell you that it doesn't really matter much. One version is that, it's a simple historical fact that earlier in the 20th century, there were a lot more hurricanes that hit the United States, a lot more powerful. And we've just emerged from a 12-year lull, unprecedented, with no intense hurricanes hitting the U.S. So from that standpoint, you can look at the data and say, well, I don't see any increase, so I don't think there's any climate change signal there. On the other hand, there is good theory out there that suggests if you have warmer ocean waters, that gives more fuel to storms and makes them more powerful than they otherwise would have been. Where we should be able to agree on those 2 points is we've been in a lull, and we're going to see more hurricanes and in general more weather disasters. Not just the United States, but the world has had a remarkable stretch of about a decade of really good luck. That apparently has just ended. So whether you think it's climate change or you think it's just a reversion to history, we have to be ready. So some of the politicking over the issue is just that, people taking sides and arguing, but the reality is more and more frequent storms are going to be coming, just as a matter of return to the past. Yeah, well, again, this
is not anything particular for you, Professor, but we had media coverage. It's like nothing else is happening in the world. I mean, I call cable tragedy TV. It's tragedy TV coverage. What? Pick your tragedy. Pick whatever. That's all we can cover. So it whips people up into this frenzy. And you want to be cautious, given what happened with Harvey. Harvey was devastating. But people were just freaking out in South Florida, and it just wasn't as bad. So I think everyone needs to calm down a little bit, both on the politics side and the hyperbolic reporting. We were joking, Professor, that I swear if you look closely in the wide shots of some of these CNN coverage, you saw a wind machine behind the reporter blowing the branch. It's like sunny out. It was blowing. It was like bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we have to understand is that the most recent 2 storms, Harvey and Irma, are occurring in the world of social media that didn't exist in nearly as mature a form as when Katrina went through, and certainly not when earlier big storms went through. So we have a much more powerful way to share information and pictures and data, and it does lend itself to that sort of overhyping. But at the same time, if you took a look at what Irma did as it went through the Caribbean, it's a serious storm that can take a lot of lives. It was well predicted many days in advance, and local officials, all the way up to the federal government, by all accounts, did a great job, both in Texas and in Florida. So to some extent, you're going to get that froth and hyperbolic coverage, and on the other hand, it saves a lot of lives.
Yeah, that's true. There was something funny about particular anchors who had their cell phones in their pockets during one of the bans of rain, and then they go to pull it out to check to see if they've gotten a flood alert, like from the National Flood Service. And he's like, "Oh, it's wet. I can't use the phone." Like, okay, maybe it's time to put it in a Ziploc bag. Just common sense, Professor. That's all I'm saying. Hey, it's great to talk to you, Professor Roger Pelkey, here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Coming up, a member of the House Freedom Caucus, the head of the House Freedom Caucus, is he not, Jim Jordan? Or past, yeah. He's going to join us. Meadows is the head of it. Ohio's 4th District. What is Jim Jordan saying about it? It's a game of wins and losses. Take it from me, and I've had some doozies, business travel trips have just gone haywire. And a lot of it is you don't have a dedicated person to handle your travel. So Drew and I are kind of going all over the place. Oh, get that plane, get this car. Oh, no. You need to win in business. And that means you want to travel like you want to travel. If you want to be in business class, fine. If you want to have economy plus, arrange it ahead of time. This is where my friends at Upside come in. Think about this. Upside has the best available prices for flights, hotel, and rental cars. That's win number 1. Win number 2 is how Upside rewards you. I love this. You get a gift card to places like Amazon.com every time you buy a business trip. And the third win is the amazing 6-star treatment. Forget the 5-star. They are awesome. You're going to love the people at Upside. They have great navigators. They're customer service specialists. Navigators are instantly accessible 24/7 on the Upside app, even reaching out to you so you can avoid a problem before the problem happens. And I'm going to help you out right now. Here you do. Just go to upside.com, use my code Laura, and you'll get a minimum of $100 gift certificate from Amazon. That's code Laura. Go to upside.com, code Laura, when you buy your next business trip at upside.com. Upside.com, you deserve a better business trip. Minimum purchase required. See site for complete details. You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Steve Bannon could not have been more accurate. She is not that smart. Maybe you're book smart. Maybe at Yale she wowed all the professors. But just kind of common sense. Maybe I should actually campaign in Wisconsin. Maybe I should do a better job trying to understand how this socialist from Vermont is getting bigger crowds than I'm getting. Or maybe I should try to figure out how this billionaire real estate developer is kind of brash and made all these supposed mistakes in the way he's run his campaign, how this guy's like getting tens of thousands of people to show up. Maybe I've got to figure that out. No, instead, she just kept going forward. Same thing, her establishment and elite alliances, places like Goldman Sachs and Hollywood, fanning out across the country. Katy Perry knocking on doors for her, all the celebrities, Bruce Springsteen, they all came out for her. And what did she get for it? A big fat loss. Identity politics only goes so far if you leave the middle class behind. You're listening to your healthy radio addiction, the Laura Ingraham Show. Remember, if you haven't signed up for that LifeZet daily email, do so. You'll be reading what I read and all the great reporters at LifeZet, politics, faith, family, health, and beyond. You're going to love it. The films that best honor those lost on 9/11. Great piece. And some of these films you might not have seen, you might not even know about. Go to lifezet.com, read this piece. Fantastic. The forgotten disaster in the American West. As media only focus on the flooding and the hurricanes and the wind, meanwhile we have 1 million plus acres in flames in Montana, some in Wyoming, in California as well. So we have to understand why that's happening. And the Forest Service has some soul searching to do in this country. So please go to lifezet.com and read that. Joining us now, I'm delighted he's with us, Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio's 4th Congressional District. And I don't think Congressman Jordan was surprised on Election Day all that much. I mean, it was a chance, right? I mean, you saw it in Ohio, what was building and had been building for years among the working class people. Did you not, Congressman?
Yeah, we had I remember this story. We opened up a Republican headquarters in Lima, Ohio a few months before the election, and a union pipe fitter walked up to me. Now, remember, it's Republican Party headquarters were opening up, and you got a union pipe fitter there, and he walked up to me, and the first thing he said is I don't care what my union leadership says, I'm voting for Donald Trump, and they ain't going to talk me out of it. And I said, good for you. And I told him, I said, you remind me of my dad, who in 1980 was a union worker for General Motors and said he'd had enough of this, and he was going to vote for Ronald Reagan. And we developed a relationship with this guy in the course of the campaign. I saw him a few other times. That was happening all across Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And that's why Secretary Clinton lost and why Donald Trump won in this critical and important election.
Well, I think that when you see kind of where we are only 8 months into this, and Bannon shot back at Charlie Rose last night when Charlie Rose said, well, so you're not taking any responsibility for this. And Bannon's like, 8 months in, dude. I mean, you got 8 months.
Yeah.
The president laid out his agenda. We need a Congress to give him bills on his desk. 8 months in.
Yeah.
I think that was a fair point that Bannon made. I mean, come on. He said Obama took 18 months to get his Obamacare through. And so, that's a fact. But moving to Congress's responsibility here, were you really surprised when Donald Trump decided to make a deal for a shorter term for the lifting of the debt ceiling for 3 months, and we'll be back at this early December 10th or whatever it is? Were you all that surprised about that, given the fact that, the Senate hasn't been able to give him a bill that he can sign?
Well, yeah, we didn't give him any options. I learned a long time ago, when you fail to prepare, you wind up with bad outcomes. And we took the longest, I said this yesterday, we took the longest non-election year, August recess, in over a decade. The recess break we took was almost 6 weeks. It was actually longer than some years politicians take when there is an election. And you know how politicians like to be back home during election time, actually campaigning. So when you take a 6-week break, we in the Freedom Caucus, we said don't go home until we actually put together a plan on the debt ceiling, until we know what rates we're going to have in our tax legislation, our tax reform legislation, until we figure out Obamacare. And yet we took this long break. And so when you don't even plan to put together a plan, and you don't offer options, what alternative did the president have? And frankly, picking a 3-month increase on the debt ceiling versus a 18-month increase, when you're not addressing the underlying problem, I don't see that there's all that big of a difference between 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, all these different. The key is we didn't address the underlying problem. We put forward ideas, and that's what we should have done, but unfortunately, those weren't presented to the president. Well,
it seemed that Paul Ryan last week, Speaker of the House, was very hopped up, more than I've heard him, about getting this tax reform done. Now maybe there's something good in this, working with Pelosi and Schumer. He seemed to have a fire lit under him real fast after that deal was made.
Yeah, and I think and that's exactly what President Trump said. He said, I want to get to tax reform. I want to reduce the tax burden on American families. So let's get that done. Our problem is we don't know the race. We don't know any specifics. Everyone's been talking about tax reform. We all know we need it. Now it's time to actually get a bill so we can begin the debate and actually pass something. Could you tell me what the corporate rate's going to be today, Laura? I don't know what it's going to be. I think it should be 15 like the White House says. I don't know how many brackets we're going to have on the personal side, what those rates are going to be. So let's make some decisions. Let's not wind up like we did on this debt thing. Let's make some decisions. Let's put a plan out there. Let's have the debate. Let's take the case to the American people, and let's pass it. That's what the American people elected us to do. So let's get focused on getting that done.
Well, and if the Republicans do not deliver on tax reform and these tax cuts, I believe this is all an academic exercise, Congressman. I mean, why even be in the majority? Honestly, why even be in politics? Go into some other line of work. Maybe you want to be in a think tank or lead discussion groups or go work in investment banking. I have no idea what they want to do. But if they want to be in politics, I have this crazy idea. Do something. Otherwise, go into another line of work. It's fine.
Well, not just do something. Do what you told the voters you were going to do. Do what they elected you to do. That's what we got to focus on. The one key element of this tax debate, Laura, that you can be so helpful on, like you always are, is we should not do a revenue-neutral tax reform bill. Revenue-neutral is Washington speak for we're going to keep the tax burden the same. We're just going to shift around who pays what. And in that scenario, what always happens is the connected class with the big-time lobbyists, they get a good deal, and middle-class families like that union pipe fitter in Lima, Ohio, they get a bad deal. So I am totally – since when did Republicans say that letting you keep more of your money was somehow a cost to government? I thought it was your money. Why don't we just construct a tax bill that lets you keep more of it and one that actually produces economic growth? That would make sense to me. So let's focus on that versus making sure Washington gets to keep the same percentage of money that's currently coming. That's ridiculous. So that, to me, will be the key debate. Let's get the rates. Let's focus on not doing revenue neutral. Let's focus on just letting people keep their money. That's how we get this economy moving.
Are we going to have transparency in this discussion on tax cuts and tax reform? Donald Trump's idea with the 4 rates was pretty specific and very simple to understand, at least for me. I think there were 3 deductions left, right? Charitable, home, and child. So we're 3 major deductions. All the other things are gone. So all the other loopholes, that stuff's all gone. So those are the 3 major deductions, unless he's changed it. So 4 rates, 3 major deductions. I think you should be able to do your taxes on one piece of paper. It's ridiculous. This all has to go. This entire IRS apparatus, which chokes private enterprise, small, medium-sized businesses, life's at. The stuff we have to do on taxes, all of it, it has to go. It is a scandal, and there should be a nationwide. I would take this show on the road. I'd educate people, minorities, women, people who supposedly hate Donald Trump are going to love him after he goes on the road and sells his tax reform and hit all of their arguments against it. I would smash down their arguments about, here's the tax cut for the rich, tax cut for the rich. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm sick of these people.
Yeah, no, I
cranky on a Monday.
I couldn't agree more.
I'm not that cranky, actually, but I'm hopped up on taxes. I'm looking at my tax bill. That's why I don't like this at all. We got to get this simplified. So is this going to be transparent, Congressman?
Let's hope so. One of the things we're saying is show us the bill.
Where is that bill? Where the hell is the bill? Where is it?
Show us the bill. So what was wrong with the healthcare debate is we thought we were going to get a repeal in one piece of legislation, replace in another, and we're going to put on President Trump's desk the same thing we put on President Obama's desk 18 months ago. And instead we got this mishmash of some repeal, some replace. So it wasn't really transparent. Remember, we were told it's a binary choice, take it or leave it. So let's do the tax bill different. Let's just roll out a bill. Let's have a real debate. Let's take the show on the road, like you said. And over the next 2 months, let's get it done. And if people see it simpler, flatter, fairer, they get to keep more of their money, and they see that the economic growth that's going to result from this, then they'll be saying, they'll be encouraging their member to vote for it and get it done.
I think that you're going to see an uprising with like a Tea Party part, Tea Party 2.0, 3.0, whatever you want to call it, if this isn't done. And I'll help lead it. I mean, I will help lead a revolution in the GOP.
Surprise me.
Yeah. Well, I'm serious. We have it all. We have it all going here. So, let's get some points on the board. Whatever cliche we want to use, it's time to do it.
And this is something that can unite the country. When they see, like, one of the things we think about on this day, when we know what happened 16 years ago, is how the country came together. And here's something a big policy change that can help our economy grow, let families keep more of their money, help communities. That's positive. So let's, like you say, let's take this on the road. But you can't take it on the road if you don't have anything to show, right? You can't hold it. What's the bill? So let's get the bill out there, the specifics.
Where's the beef? Where's the beef? Let's do a new one, Congressman. Where's the bill? Yeah. Where's the beef? Where's the bill? Why is this so complicated? Get a bill. We want a framework so we can talk about it. Trump can then, you guys can pass it. The House has been better than the Senate. Senate's a complete disaster. So Ryan at least got the Obamacare thing finally through the House, and Senate, meanwhile, John McCain wants his legacy burnished, so he just decides I'm going to flip and I'm going to just wreak havoc on the whole congressional Senate caucus.
Yeah, and you made me think there's a couple things that I think really upset voters, and appropriately so. One is when politicians say one thing and then get knocked and do something else. And that's exactly what happened. 6 Republican senators voted against the very same legislation they had voted for 18 months before. The same sentences, same paragraphs, the same comments.
Well, they'll be gone.
Everything was the same except the number at the top was a different bill number.
Yeah, they're going to be gone.
And then the other thing that drives me crazy is this double standard.
No.
This idea that there's one set of rules for us and some different set if your name is Clinton, Comey, Lynch, Lerner. That kicks them off too. So we need to focus on all that and do something that, do what we told them we were going to do, get those things done. If we do that, I think we'll be just fine. President Trump will be, be doing even better than he already is.
My goal for the country and for the Republicans is that by the time 2020 rolls around, so much has been done to reduce the stranglehold of the federal government and to free up business. So much has been done, contrary to what everyone predicted and all the naysayers, that Donald Trump increases the amount that he wins in Ohio by, I'd by half. I'd say landslide victory of 1984 proportion. I think that is actually possible. I think it's possible if you do tax reform, Obamacare repeal, etc. So, last time around he beat Hillary, what was it, 51-43, Congressman, something like that? 50, yeah, I think it was 51-43. It was a big victory.
8 points in Ohio. Yeah. Yep.
Remember they said he wasn't going to win Ohio. Then remember when they said Pennsylvania was the Waterloo? How many times did you hear that Waterloo phrase? I still listen. I go back and listen to that again just to make myself smile. That's great stuff.
Yeah, no, he did. It was interesting. We should have been in Washington getting those things done, but when we were home and I was traveling across the 4th District of Ohio, and you heard from people, they support so much of what President Trump campaigned on and what he's trying to get accomplished, and that is that's what we have to focus on as we move forward here over the next 2 months. And central to that is the tax reform, tax cut legislation.
Congressman Jim Jordan, always great to check in with you. Thank you so much. Give my best to your great people of your district, Ohio's 4th. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show as anchors and reporters are they're standing in sunshine and still talking about, they're in places in Florida where there is literally no damage, standing in front of bushes. Do you see this on CNN? There's like bushes, we lost a limb. It's like one tree limb. They're scattering limbs on the ground now just to have a good camera shot of the damage. This is ridiculous. We'll take a break. Don't go away. Hillary Clinton on CBS Sunday Morning embarrasses herself one more time. It's a wonder that Trump didn't win in a landslide, a total landslide. After watching her, forget it. Now she's making us faint with her lack of self-reflection and understanding of why she lost and always pointing fingers at other people. Typical Clinton, no personal responsibility. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. We have a lot more to get to, including a New York City Fire Department chief